So thanks a lot for the introduction, Aaron. And it's my great pleasure to be here to talk about my research. So in this talk, today we will talk about rethinking LLM behaviors from uncertainty and price to financial applications. So I'm Hangfeng, assistant professor in computer science and data science. So we recently actually see a lot of progress about large language models. For example, in 2022, we see that ChatGPT is released and it becomes really impressive because it's much better chatbot compared to previous ones. And after 1 year, we also see that ChatGPT can see, hear, and speak in some sense that OpenAI extended it to multimodal so that it can not only deal with text, but also deal with image, audio, and some others. So, and recently in 2024, we can see that OpenAI also introduced OpenAI O1, which is designed for reasoning based on reinforcement learning. So in general, we can easily see large language model is in a fast evolution, and we can witness the progress in the short period. And so this is just the example from OpenAI company, but actually for a lot of companies, we have progress in this area. So the lecture questions that, so given the power of large language model and that they have so many impressive performance, so can we simply rely on large language models for real world applications? I think some people may think it's possible, but there are still many limitations. So there are some well-known limitations. For example, large language model tend to be hallucinate. So it's something like, so when they don't know the answer for a question, they just make some misinformation. So people may think that large language model is very powerful and just trust them because they answer questions correctly for some previous examples. But when for a new example, large language model can still be hallucinated, which is very dangerous because people couldn't expect whether large language model will give us some correct answer or give us some misinformation. So we can also see that large language model usually several hundred billion size of parameters, as well as trained on several thousand billion tokens. So we can easily find that the model is in a super large scale, and almost only industry people with a lot of computational resources can play with large language model. But as a human, we actually don't need so much data to learn the abilities. So the efficiency of large language model still need to be improved. So and there's also some biases. So the biases have many resources, for example. So because they train on the almost the whole data in the website, we can easily find that when we talk about some occupations or professions, they are often associated with male or female. So the data itself has some bias. And a lot of studies already show that when we train the models on the data, it usually will strengthen or amplify the biases regarding to gender, race, and many others. So we need to make sure that large language models can perform fairly in terms of these important factors. So, and the large language model simply train on a lot of data, but they didn't give credits to them. So we need to think about how to deal with the copyright issues of large language model when we use it. So, and when we submit some requests to OpenAI, so if we use ChatGPT, actually most of the data will be used to train ChatGPT. So if you release some important personal information, there's some concerns on the privacy and the safety. So if we ask a large language model some dangerous questions, such as how to build a bomb or other dangerous things, we hope that large language model can refuse to answer this type of questions instead of simply give us instructions. So more importantly, we can see that large language models are very powerful, but most low people really understand why it works, why scaling is so powerful tool. So and some also people may be concerned about the super intelligence. If large language model is more intelligent than human, then as a human we couldn't expect what they will do because they're more smart and they may do something very harmful for human and may look like very helpful because it's hard for us to communicate with some super intelligence systems. So and in my talk, So I simply investigate three specific applications and see the potential limitations of large language models. So in my first part, so I will talk about the effects of biases. So when we ask ChatGPT, different people have different style of writing, and this type of writing actually is biased because we may rely on some simple words such as we, or some people may tend to use I, and this type of writing bias would affect natural models' performance on self-identification. So we hope that the natural model can always know what they don't know. So if they know the answer, then they can output the accurate response. But if they don't know the answer, we hope that the model can simply say, I don't know, instead of saying some misinformation created by themselves. So we will see that how to analyze the natural model's confidence on bias effects in measured uncertainties. So other issue is that when we talk about large language model, common application, if we just treat them as example training, so give an example input, give me answer, that's maybe not very good. So ideally, we can use large language model to get some principle on how to answer several types of questions, which is we call inductive reasoning. So we hope that we can generate some hypotheses beyond the model's decision making. And we see that for real-world inductive reasoning, large language model has a very strong prior, and providing some examples in context learning doesn't really help. So it means that the standard in context learning with standard prompting may not have a big impact on the inductive reasoning, and we may need to rethink about that. And in the third part, we consider a financial application called volatility prediction, which is an important factor for the risk of stocks. And we will make use of the earnings call transcripts. So some documents describe the financial status of the companies. But we see that if we use large language model to process those documents, we hope that they can be helpful for the prediction. But unfortunately, most large language model embedding or direct prediction doesn't really help. So it may just capture the company identity or tick identity instead of the semantics. So let's look at the first part. So in the first part, we will talk about bias effects in measured uncertainties. And this is a joint work with Xinyi Liu, who is a PhD student at the Simon School, and Wei Guangwang, who is an assistant professor in GHU. So in this part, we care about uncertainty quantification. As we mentioned that when we use the model, so if the model is confident, so we couldn't expect that model know everything. That's most impossible. So if model is confident, we hope that the model can know that the answer more accurately. And the model is unconfident, we hope that the model doesn't really know the answer, and then we just give us an alert. So the model says that I'm not very confident for the answer, and you may need to use them carefully. So this we call model self-perception. So a common way to help model self-perception is that we can use uncertainty quantification. So whether the model is certain or not certain about their response. Okay, so most study actually focus on the question answering with a single valid answer. For example, give a question, and they have 4 choices, and so you just have one correct answer, and then you just see that whether the model is uncertain among different options. If they are uncertain, then it means that they are less confident. So and the study already showed that large language models are well calibrated, means that large language models self-reported probability of tokens or the self-reported confidence is well aligned with the real confidence. But unfortunately, with reinforcement learning with human feedback, the post-training actually will make a large language model much more overconfident. In other words, so even the model itself doesn't sure about the answer, they will still think that I'm almost 100% sure that's correct. So that would easily lead to hallucination or misinformation creation. But the real world situation will be much more complicated. So for example, even for this very simple visual question answering task, so output one number in the image, we can see that if as a human, we have actually 2 correct answers, but we only need to output one number. So 42 or 15 are both correct. So if a model is hesitating among 42 or 40, the terrible thing. It means that the model doesn't really know the correct answer for the question, but instead hesitating among correct options and wrong options. So in this situation, we hopefully the model should be less confident, or at least tell us that they are less confident. So this type of uncertainty is called epistemic uncertainty. So epistemic uncertainty means that the model lack of knowledge. So they don't really know the correct answer for the question, and they will hesitating. They will have some uncertainty among the response. So another type of uncertainty actually is aleatoric uncertainty. So if the model simply hesitating among 42 or 15, it's still uncertainty. Assume that I have 50% chance to output 42 or 50% chance to output 15. It's uncertain, but it doesn't really affect the question answering because both are correct. So it's called aleatoric uncertainty. So it comes from the irreducible randomness of the true data. So when we say the uncertainty, if the situation that, so for generation tasks is very common, we actually have multiple semantically valid answer. And in this situation, the uncertainty itself actually reflects both epistemic uncertainty and aleatoric uncertainty. And we will show the decomposition later. But in general, things will be much more complicated. We only want to estimate epistemic uncertainty to indicate model confidence, but we couldn't avoid aleatoric uncertainty for the applications. So principal research already studied this problem, but they many simplify the settings. So they only consider, okay, we still have multiple correct options, such as 42 in English or 42 in numeracy. So they are semantic equivalent. So we allow that the question can have multiple correct options, but unfortunately, they had a restriction that the correct options will have the same meaning, just have different reputations. So in this way, they can make use of natural language inference to help deal with the semantic equivalence problem, and then try to merge the probability of the option with the same meaning. So, but in real world, just in our example, so a more common way actually is that there are multiple semantically distinct valid answer. So then the uncertainty among those all correct options, but a different meaning with different meaning. So how to deal with this aleatoric uncertainty is a challenging problem. So in our situation, we just consider multi-label. Multi-label means that we can have multiple correct answers and multi-choice. For example, we have 4 options for the region question answering. So and 2 of them are correct and 2 of them are wrong. So in this situation, so the epistemic uncertainty and aleatoric uncertainty will define as follows. So if we consider the probability of correct options, so we merge we consider the sum of probability of all correct options, assuming we have 2 correct options. We just merge them as the probability of correct. And then the merged correct probability option and the uncertainty among it with as well as other wrong options, which is epistemic uncertainty. Because epistemic uncertainty means that you are hesitating among the correct option as well as multiple different wrong options. So this uncertain is what we want to control. So epistemic uncertainty. But at the same time, if the uncertainty just happen among all correct options, so within correct options, so you just choose 42 or 15 in the previous example, it doesn't matter. So you just normalize the probability with the total correct probability, and then the entropy of among all correct options will be the aleatoric uncertainty. So the total entropy actually equals to epistemic uncertainty plus the probability of correct multiplied by aleatoric entropy. So we can easily find that in practice, we couldn't know epistemic uncertainty because we don't know which answer is correct or wrong. So before providing the correct answer, we just ask ChatGPT. They give us some uncertainty, several options. Without ground truth, we don't know which is correct or wrong. So in some sense, it's very hard for us to directly compute the epistemic uncertainty, or entropy. So in general, people simply compute the total entropy. And but recap that only epistemic entropy reflects the model confidence. So in some sense, we need to find some smart way such that we can let entropy better approximate the epistemic entropy. So with the presence of aleatoric entropy. Okay. Any questions? So what can we do? We want that the entropy estimation better approximates the epistemic entropy. So a common way people thinking about is that we can use perturbation to do bias mitigation. So they have some simple hypotheses. So when we ask a question, so different people have different steps. For example, I send a question. So given the image, and we have 4 options here, and I ask ChatGPT. So I simply ask ChatGPT to give me the correct answer among the 4 options, one correct answer. So ChatGPT told me that the first option have 0.7 probability to be correct, and the remaining 3 will be 0.1. So whether the description consistent with the image. So but another student or other people ask ChatGPT. So because due to the different writings or phrases they use in the prompting, actually the distribution will be different. So the assumption that it's very hard to get some bias due to if the model tends to capture some superficial clues in my prompt, then they will be biased. And if we consider rephrasing the prompt many times, for example, we rephrase the prompt 10 times or 4 times here, and then for every time we have a distribution estimation over the 4 options, we just consider the average. So this averaging hopefully can mitigate the bias, because every specific prompt has some specific bias, and the model may simply rely on some superficial clues such as special words in the prompt to give an estimation of probability. But the different writings of the prompts may give us different biases. So just the averaging is a common way to mitigate the bias. So this is called bias mitigation through perturbations. So we can see that if the model focuses too much on the superficial clues, they will tend to give some option with very high probability, because they may think that, okay, the first option has a lot of overlap with your prompt. So I will give the first option a lot of probability. But we change the prompt, so different prompt have different bias. So consider average, we usually will have much higher entropy. And this entropy, without bias, it may better reflect the real entropy. So based on this similar idea, so we extend to large vision language model. So we consider 3 text based biases, such as the phrasing bias. We just rephrase the prompts 10 times, and the positional bias, because we have 4 potential options, but their order will have a big impact. So if we choose the second description to put it in the first place, it may change the probability distribution. Similarly for label bias, so if we just ask the model to choose the correct description, or ask the model to output 1 to indicate the true, so they have different. So large models are usually sensitive to the prompt, right? Not so sensitive, but a little bit sensitive to the order of options, to the anchor word that I use. So that's called label bias, and the prompt you written. So similar for image, we also consider shape bias. So we can rescale the image a little bit. We consider orientation bias. We can rotate the image. So when we rotate the image, the model will give us a different estimation of probability distribution, and a low-level feature bias, adding some Gaussian noise. So we just studied GPT-4o and consider the bias mitigations through perturbations, and consider a standard property called AURC. So we can see that we compare 3 baseline. One side we use number of potential answers. So for example, for repetitive, so we just repeat the same prompt 10 times. Okay, we repeat the same prompt 10 times, and the larger model will generate 10 different answers due to the randomness. So in this situation, we can count how many numbers. So for example, sometimes they output A, sometimes they output B. So the number of answers. And also we rephrase the prompt 10 times. So that's the proposed. We can easily see that if we rephrase compared to just repetition, our score will be much higher. So, and similarly, it's not only for the number of answer base time, but also the estimated probability and entropy. So we can easily see that. So we can rephrase is much better than repetition. So the key idea is that the rephrase may mitigate the bias. And if we combine 3 types of bias mitigation, we can actually increase about 7% on AURC. So, and for image, we have about 3% again. So the image, the gain is much lower than text-based bias. The issue may be that in the training, so when we train large language model, we actually already rescale the image and rotate the image. So during pre-training, we already do some perturbation on image, such that the model will be less sensitive to the potential bias for some specific scale or some specific sets, or some specific rotation. So in general, we can see that if we perturb the model a little bit, and the average is the probability or average is the entropy, so usually we can have a better estimation of the confidence. So when we measure confidence, we actually AURC will be the area on the x-axis will be false positive and the y-axis will be true positive. So if the model have some confidence threshold, such as model have confidence threshold larger than some threshold, we will set them as positive and other negative. So you can see that the best system will be much better compared to the single inference entropy in the VL checklist. So which is the purple line, the brown line compared to the orange line. So amongst the every places, so under the same false positive rate, we can get higher true positive rate. So it means that the model's entropy estimation is closer to the real entropy or closer to the real confidence. So, but the question still remaining. So why this bias mitigation is helpful? Why? So to understand this question, we actually need to understand how does the bias affect the measured uncertainties, epistemic or aleatoric. So we just know bias mitigation can be helpful, such that we can get a closer estimation of uncertainties close to the truth one. So, but we don't know why. So some recent work shows that large language model will tend to copy input information when the model confidence is low. So model confidence, we don't really know the model confidence. We can have some estimation, but in general, if model is less confident, they will tend to copy input information. So it means that if model's confidence is different, model will have quite different behavior. So we make the following hypothesis. So large language model will tend to rely more on bias when the model is less confident. So if a model is less confident, they rely more on bias and tend to be more overconfident. Then they will have very bad things because it's actually very low confident, but they think themselves are very confident. So that's not good for the practice. So we consider the following two data sets and the GB4 and the Queen2 to large language model. So in this part, we just do analysis, do linear regression. So the independent variables input will be model confidence. So we couldn't have a real one. We just approximate by the sum of total probability of correct option after bias mitigation. So because when do analysis, we can actually know which one is correct or wrong. But when do uncertainty anticipation, we don't know which one is correct or wrong. But do analysis, we can have that information. And we use the impact of bias as dependent variable. So we just consider, okay, before bias mitigation, we have uncertainty. After bias mitigation, we have another uncertainty. We consider the change. So, and we have two metrics. One is coefficients. So what does it mean if the coefficients are positive? So if coefficients are positive, it means that if model is if it's less confident, then the impact is smaller. So if the coefficient is negative, it means that smaller model confidence would lead to higher bias impact. So it means that if negative confidence coefficients, so if one model is less confident, the bias would have a bigger impact. So and mitigating will be helpful. So and we'll consider p-values. So low values, typically smaller than 0.05, indicate a statistically significant. So let's look at the first part. We consider absolute change. So the uncertainty before bias mitigation and uncertainty after bias mitigation, we just consider the absolute change. We don't consider direction. So when we look at those numbers, so we can easily find that. So we don't need to do this exact number, but we can easily find almost all numbers are negative. So negative coefficients means that lower model confidence would have greater bias impact. So if a model is less confident, then the model will rely more on superclues or bias. So such that it's far away from the real one. Because if bias mitigation have a big impact, means that adding bias have a big impact. So that's a reverse order, but they are similar. So models less confident, they are tended to more rely on superficial clues and they are more biased. So if we look at the ratio between the change of epistemic uncertainty and the aleatoric uncertainty, we can find interesting things that so the impact of epistemic uncertainty is much larger because the ratio is not most of the cases larger than 1. So and some cases can close to 10. So it means that bias would have a big impact on epistemic uncertainty. So when model is less confident, they will more tend to hesitating among correct options and wrong options compared to hesitating among correct options. Okay. So, but what if we consider the directional change? So when model is less confident, we hope that the uncertainty is large or the confidence is small. So we are worried about the underestimation of uncertainty, or we are worried about the overconfidence in the no confidence situation. So we don't want the model to be overconfident when they are less confident, such that we couldn't trust their self-reported confidence. So for underestimation, you can see that for epistemic uncertainty, the ratios are negative. So means if the model is less confident, then it tends to have a greater underestimation of epistemic entropy. So greater underestimation is equivalent to overconfidence. So if a model is less confident, the model will tend to overconfident. So because it's directional, not only the change, but the directional. So it will explicitly say that if model has a small confidence, then the estimated confidence will be much higher. So due to the bias effect. So, but there's almost a low significant effect on aleatoric uncertainty. So even though the model will change the unconfidence estimation, so for aleatoric uncertainty, when the model is less confident, but they are a lot of directional. So sometimes higher, sometimes lower. So putting them together, we can see that why bias mitigation is helpful. The key reason is that epistemic entropy is greater underestimation. So with bias mitigation, we will increase epistemic entropy a lot for low confidence situation. And for aleatoric entropy, we didn't change too much. So if we increase the epistemic entropy a lot after bias mitigation, then it actually closer to the entropy will closer to the epistemic entropy. So in some sense, the entropy will more reflect the model confidence. And the impact, so we also better understand the impact. So it means that even though large language model is very powerful, but it's still very sensitive to bias, especially when they are less confident. Okay, so this is the first part. Any questions? Yeah.
So when you look at the impact of biases, do you do you look at multiple types of biases or just like one type?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So actually we have 6 types of bias. So one bias is called phrasing bias. So by default, you just have, so here, the bias a little bit different. We consider bias mitigation. So we assume that the default setting have bias, and we hope that the bias mitigation can reduce bias. So if the change is large, we think original bias have a big impact. So a little bit complicated, but in this way, we consider 6 types of bias mitigation, or in other words, we consider 6 types of bias. So one is phrasing bias. So if we rephrase the same prompts 10 times, we hope that the rephrasing can mitigate phrasing bias and positional bias, because if we always put the one option in the first place or put the one option in the second place, they will have different output and the label bias. And similarly for image. So for shape bias, if we always have something like 24 multiplied by 24 pixel, but we reshape it, we hope that it can mitigate. So in some sense, we think that if we didn't do reshaping and we didn't do rephrasing, the default setting will have potential bias, and we have 6 types. Yeah.
well, if you find like specific type of these biases, they have greater impact than others, when you bias, like how that influence confidence.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I didn't remember the exact number, but in general, text bias is larger compared to image bias. And a part of the reason because when we do image training, we already do rescaling, rotation to do data augmentation. So in some sense, the image already have different type of scales in the training data. But for rephrasing, text-based bias is larger, and among them, rephrasing is the largest one. So that also means that even the prompt writing, large model already a little bit robust to prompt writing, but in some sense, the writing also represents some style, and it may have effect. And another thing is the label. So label bias is also very large. So that's already well known. So because if you're using true and false, or using correct or wrong, large model have different, we call label anchor. So anchor word will have different and position. So all three are large. So for text position, if you just shuffle the order of options, it have big impact. But in general, the all three text based bias have larger impact. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So let's look at the second part. We talk about the model prior inductive reasoning. So this is a joint work with Zhuo Liu and Ding Yu, who are my PhD student at the University of Rochester. So why we care about inductive reasoning? Because current machine learning or large language model actually is example driven. So it means that we train on a lot of examples and give a new input, we try to get the output. So for example, we have 100 million question answerings when we try with ChatGPT, and then we get a new question and ChatGPT can learn how to do it. But that's not the common way for scientific discovery. So when we do some scientific discovery, usually we care about hypothesis. So for example, we think that the world is in a quantum state. So that's the basic hypothesis in quantum mechanisms. So we will do some hypothesis, conclude some rules. And we, based on the study of DNA, we think that it has a double helix structure. So instead of something like, if we just consider current deep learning or large language model, we do example-driven learning. Okay, I see a lot of DNA structure. I don't have anything to describe them. Give me a new structure, I can do some prediction. So that's a totally different way. So how do we human propose new hypothesis? So most of the time we have two directions. One is that we just read the literature. Okay, we found that some researchers think that bias have a big impact, and the model confidence will affect the model bias, something like this way. And we also do from observation. So we see a lot of observations and conclude some hypotheses. So for example, Newton saw that apples fell straight down, and Newton gave the hypothesis, Newton's law of universal gravitation. So it's a very big step. So it's too challenging. So given some examples, Newton can find the connections and see that every two things will have gravitation. Okay. So and Darwin sees that finches on different Galapagos islands had different big shapes. So we can see Darwin just make the hypothesis species evolve over time through natural selection. So it's a big step, but we can see that from a lot of examples or observations, we hope that we can conclude some hypotheses to describe this phenomena. So which is called inductive reasoning. So we hope that we can get some broad, generalizable, and interpretable principles or hypotheses derived from a set of observations, which will be very interesting for scientific discovery and also some interpretation. For example, let's look at the hallucination. So we already know that large model tend to hallucinate. So we have some hallucination example. So in this first image, so given the question, is there a baseball in the image? So the default have baseball. So the label of hallucination means that there's no baseball. So if you look at the detail, but there's no baseball, although they have some baseball players. So second one, so is there a life in the image? So it's hallucination. So it's just a format doesn't big deal, but in general, you need to know that hallucination means that the answer is no. So we saw fox and we saw plate, but we didn't saw left. So in the third example, we can see that is there a spoon in the image. So even though we saw the refrigerator, we can see that actually it has spoon. So in the color. So I just want to ask a question. So we can just use AI models to do prediction. Okay, give me an image and give me a description. Let's see whether it's hallucinated or not. That's one option. But ideally, we found that whether we can get some pattern. So we can see that in those examples, large language model actually can give us a pattern. So seeing that hallucinations are more likely when the question object is contextually expected in the scene. For example, when we see the fork, and the plate, we can expect a knife, but actually it's absent. So we're causing the model to infer its presence based on typical scene object associations. So it means that large language model have some prior that forks and the knives are usually appear at the same time. So when they see the knife, even though they didn't see the fork, they will expect a fork. So in general, we hope that we can make use large language model to help us to get those patterns such that we can explain a lot of examples. So the input will be a problem of interest, such as we have a lot of hallucination patterns, examples, hallucination patterns, and enabled demonstrations. We have a lot of QA pairs. So the output will be the hypothesis for the problem of interest. So I have a template. We use task-specific instruction and have some requirements for the hypothesis. And we hope that we can provide some positive examples and negative examples, such the model can help us to get some hypothesis to summarize the patterns in the examples. So a lot of work try to improve the inductive reasoning ability of large language model, but the field work actually explore the internal mechanism. So the internal mechanism, I mean that, so when we make this prediction, we can have two expectations. So one is that large language model has its own prior. So large language model already know a lot of knowledge. So large language model can guess the hypothesis, can conclude some pattern. Another one is the demonstration. So we hope the large language model can make use of the examples in the context to get a better hypothesis. So what if we don't provide any demonstration to large language model? So what's the quality of hypothesis generated by large language model? We consider two types of evaluation. One is indirect evaluation. So we first ask a large language model to get some hypothesis based on the examples, such as hallucination patterns, and then use large language model to make use of the hypothesis to do prediction. So for example, in the original example, we can actually use this pattern to do prediction. So if there's a new image and the question object is contextually expected in the scene but absent, so it's hallucinate. So something like this way. So in this scene, we can do some classification. So we use hypothesis with the help of large language model for classification. Another thing is that, okay, we just ask a human to evaluate the hypothesis generated by the large language model. And we also ask large language model itself to evaluate the quality of hypothesis. So we consider 6 data sets and the 3 type of inductive reasoning pipeline. So just using the input-output prompting. Also, we can do refinement. For example, we first ask the large language model to generate several candidates, and then give new examples, ask the large language model to re-rank them and polish them. So that's the second algorithm. And the third algorithm is a reinforcement learning algorithm. So given reward and with multiple tens of examples, try to refine and improve the hypothesis generated by large language model. So let's see the results. The results are really surprising, because on the 3 types of prompting strategy or prompting algorithm for inductive reasoning, and for 6 data sets, if we consider the average performance, we can see that the model without a demonstration, so usually you have 30 to 50 examples in the demonstration or in context learning, have quite a similar performance compared to the model with demonstration. So it means that large model are zero-shot hypothesis generator, and adding examples don't really help. So that's very strange, because for most tasks, 4-shot examples are helpful. Here we have 30 to 50 shot. So in content learning, by default, we will expect examples are helpful. But removing those examples, just using instruction, large model have quite a similar and slightly better performance compared to the hypothesis generated by. So this is also true for large model based pairwise comparison. So we ask large model to compare the hypothesis generated by large model without demonstration, and with demonstration we can see that large model also prefer the hypothesis generated without demonstration a little bit, but quite similar results. And also we can give a score for helpfulness and novelty. So large model still have very similar preference. So large model can generate hypotheses with good helpfulness and novelty without a demonstration. So for example, in the example we mentioned, we ask large model to get some hallucination pattern in visual question answering. No examples, large model can already generate very good patterns without seeing any examples. Okay. So for human evaluation, we can see that human also prefer hypothesis generated without demonstration. So the gray part is much larger than the blue part, slightly larger than the blue than the green part. Okay. So does the ground truth label in the examples really matter? So removing examples in the context don't have any impact on the inductive reasoning or hypothesis generation is very surprising. So we further conduct the following analysis. Okay, we provide 30 correct examples. We also provide 30 flipped label examples. Okay, so orange is hallucinated, but we give a flipped label, not a hallucination. Or orange is, so the fact is not hallucinated, but we give a label hallucinate. So, and also random label, so just a random choose label, and only keep a positive example and only keep negative examples. So surprising thing is that, so any type of labeling of the examples and the choice of examples couldn't change the model prior. So didn't have big change. So the difference for most cases is less than 2.5. So the accuracy already are about 68. So very small change. So in general, we also see the results for other large models such as Queen 2 and Gemini. So in summary, we can see that we want to use large model to help us to get some general patterns or principles from examples. But the surprising thing is that large model can get as good as patterns without seeing any demonstration or even seeing flipped demonstration. So that's the surprising thing. So in other words, we can see that standard in-context learning methods have some problems with inductive reasoning. We may need to figure out some better methods to leverage examples. So I think examples are definitely helpful, but the issue is that standard prompting with in-context learning doesn't help. So we need some other ways to use large language model for inductive reasoning and to take advantage of examples, not just their prior. So any questions? Okay, so let's look at the third part. The ticker identity in earnings call transcripts. So this is also a joint work with my 2 PhD students, Ding Yu and Zhuo Liu. So an earnings call is a conference call heard by a company to discuss its financial performance for a specific period. So usually a quarter or a year. So, and it usually includes several components. For example, so it includes some opening remarks by executives, so summarizing financial performance, and it includes detailed discussion of revenue, profit, expenses, and the company strategy. So it also have some Q&A session between analysts and the executive. So we can easily see that this type of information have a lot of information of the company, and we care about the volatility. So volatility just a standard deviation of daily returns, so which is a measure to measure the fraction of stock price. So if the stock changes very fast during a period, then it has a large variance, so standard deviation. So higher volatility means stock price moves up and down more frequently, and the lower volatility means the price is more stable. So which is very important for stock investment. It's an important factor for risk. So if we consider the daily return, RI, and the average return, R bar, and consider the standard deviation, that's just the volatility. So we hope that we can make use of earnings to predict the volatility. So why? Because when the company release some earnings call transcripts, so usually the price will have a big change because the company provides some new situation of the financial status or some new information of the plans, some fresh and critical financial data. For example, so Target misses Q3 revenue estimates, stock drops 21.2. So you can see that if the company don't have some very good earnings or doesn't satisfy the expectations of people, then the stock will have a big change on the price. So the mainstream NLP community thinks that earnings call transcripts are very important, and then they simply use language model, try to capture a lot of rich semantics in the transcripts, and that hopefully they can be used to understand the markets. So for example, they will use language models to extract some sentiment and tone in the transcripts, and also the identify some themes and events, or analyze analyst QA interactions. So, but there's some issues to better investigate the impact of earnings. So usually, once the company release some earnings call transcripts, the price will change. But we hope that we can make use of the earnings call transcripts to predict this change. So to predict the volatility. So in some sense, the semantics are already covered in the transcripts, and transcripts should be helpful for us to predict the future change of prices, which is important. So, but for existing data sets, there are some limitations. So first one is that they don't have a correct volatility calculation, because when the earnings call transcript release, they have a before after market attribute. So if we release the before market, then today will be the first of the day being affected. If the release is of earnings is after the market, the next day will be the first day to be affected by the earnings call transcripts. So, and we consider accurate volatility calculation. So if it's before market, then today will be the first day to be affected. If it's after market, the next day will be the first day to be affected. And also, so most data sets only consider two earnings, around two earnings per ticker, so per company. So every company only have two earnings. So, but we have a better coverage. So every earnings ticker or every company, we have 20 earnings call records. Okay. So, so some other advantages, something like we have about 118, so 100 earnings, and span the period from 2019 to 2023. So we also have representative tickers from various sectors, and it's more recent because it's from 2019 to 2023. So have up-to-date information and reflect the latest market dynamics. So in general, we can see that in this new data set, every company have more earnings call transcripts, give us chance to better analyze how to leverage earnings call transcripts for volatility prediction. So Rodis mentioned that once the company released the earnings call due to some new information provided in the transcripts, the price will change. So it's observed verified in our data set. We just consider the distribution for every day. So we can easily find that once the earnings release, the next day, the future one, distribution is quite different from other days. So it means that the earnings will have a big impact on the next day's price. Okay. So if we have a big impact on the last day's daily return, but for volatility prediction, we have considered the variance. So, and usually for the volatility for future one, we will consider past two, past one, and the future one together to compute the volatility due to the variance. So because we consider window is as 3, so in general, so all volatility that involve future one daily return will be affected, and they are similar. So we simply use future 3 as our target. So in some sense, we want to use the meaning or semantics of earnings call transcripts to predict the volatility in future 3. Okay, so that's our task. So given earnings call transcripts, we want to predict the volatility prediction in future 3. That's our task. So a closer look at that. If we look at the volatility for every company, here we have 3 companies. So Johnson & Johnson, Visa, Tesla. We can see that the distribution is quite different. So it seems that every company have a special distribution of volatility. This may be caused the fact that there are some intrinsic company characteristics are stable during maybe 5 years. So because they have the same industry and sector classification, operational dynamics, company size and market position, financial structure. So due to the inherent property of company, so the volatility for each company maybe have similar distribution in contrast with other companies. To understand, we consider to achieve this goal. So given earnings call transcripts, we want to predict the volatility, post earning volatility. So we consider 2 baseline, very simple baseline. One is called the post earnings volatility. So we simply collect the post earning volatility in the whole training data and get the mean value of the all post earning volatility in the training data, and use that value to predict all future volatility in the test data. Okay, you just consider mean in the training data as a prediction for test data. So second one is called the semantic post earning volatility. So in this part, we come for ticker in the test data. We first find all post earning volatility from the same ticker and use the mean within the same ticker to predict the test data. So it means that if for the company Tesla, we just choose all post earning volatility in the training data for Tesla, and then use that value to predict future volatility for Tesla. Okay, or similarly, for Google, we simply use all post earning volatility from Google in the training data and compute their mean to predict the future volatility in the test data. So any questions? So in the future data, so all of the test data will be future data. So we always use all the data as training and the future data as testing. Okay, so already they are training free and they are very expandable. So the first assumption is that post earning volatility have similar patterns. So we can use the statistical mean of the training data to predict test data, or of the older data to predict the new data. So the second baseline is based on assumption that same ticker have similar volatility change. So that's the assumption, so expandable. And we also consider some baseline. So we think they are strong. One is direct prediction. So we just prompt GPT-4 and Gemini with the task description and the fair shot examples, such as given earnings call transcripts and paired with the volatility. We hope that the model can learn how to make the prediction based on instruction and prompts. So that's just a fair shot prompting. Okay. So we didn't expect they have good performance because it's well known that large language models don't have very good results on regression task, since it's not very sensitive to numeracy. But we also consider embedding-based model. We use earnings call transcripts and use OpenAI embedding and Gecko embedding to get the embedding for the transcripts. And then use the embedding fitting into multi-layer perceptron in the training data to make the prediction. So we have multi-layer perceptron with OpenAI embedding of the transcripts. We hope that the embedding of transcripts can get a very good semantics of the transcripts and then make a prediction. So we also consider some fine-grained text embedding. So we think that maybe transcripts is not well organized. So we use some summarization, task-specific prompting, and use natural model to extract the key information to get some fine-grained summary of the earnings call transcripts. And then we put them into OpenAI embedding to get the embedding, and then train a two-layer multi-layer perceptron. So, and we also consider some randomly generated embedding. So random all means that every transcript will be assigned a random embedding. Okay, so every transcript have a random embedding. So without using any large language model information, so and without it actually removes both semantics and the ticker identity. So ticker just a big company. So we just assign a random embedding for every transcript. So second baseline random ticker means that for every ticker we assign a random embedding. But for the transcripts from the same ticker, we will use the same embedding. Okay. So for example, for Google, all transcripts for Google have one embedding. All transcripts for Apple have an embedding, but the embedding is random generated. Any questions? So when we look at the results, so the results are too complicated, but I can give some key takeaway. So if we look at the performance of large language model, direct prediction with 8 shot and instructions. So that achieves the worst performance. It's not very surprising, but a little bit surprising that large language model is so struggling on volatility prediction because the performance is too bad, much worse than our simple baseline and all other baselines. So usually much higher. So the mean square error. So the value is mean squared error. So have different quarter and for the same quarter we have different window size and consider the average. So that's the standard way people evaluate. But we can simply consider the average part. So it's too complicated. So but you can easily find that for example for first one 34.348 and for our baseline about 0.24. So actually a very big gap. So in general we can see that even though large language models are very powerful, but fair shot prompting with instruction have very bad performance for volatility prediction. Oh yeah.
Structure in context learning examples here. Like what do the shots look like in each shot?
Just any score transcripts paired with volatility.
Like a single score though.
Yes, a single score. Yeah. So standard input for transcripts. So another thing is that our simple baseline, so same ticker post any volatility means that we just compare the mean of the same ticker in the training data and to predict everything in the test data for the same ticker. We will show the state of art. So I didn't show other models. So actually it's also the state of art in the existing benchmark for all models we see, including some time series models, including multimodal models, including both transcripts and the price. So all complicated models, this simple baseline achieves almost the state of art. So why this is so simple baseline can achieve state of art compared to so many complicated models, including large language model? So we did some analysis. So based on the predictions made by our simple baseline, as well as other transcripts-based models. So in our setting, such as direct using OpenAI to get embedding, and then using two-layer multi-layer perceptron to make a prediction. That's called vanilla OpenAI. So we can see that the correlation between the predictions of our simple baseline and all transcript-based baseline using LLM different ways. We can see that correlation is very high, much higher compared to the one that random all. So random all, you just random sample an embedding for every transcript and didn't get any information from ticker or from semantics. For random ticker, we just randomly assign embedding for the ticker without any semantic information, just have a ticker identity. So we think that this highly linear correlation actually indicate maybe most embedding only capture ticker identity. So even though we have a lot of fancy models, we use only called transcripts. So I just show some large language model based models, but actually those embedding are similar to random ticker. It only capture the information for that company. Okay. So we can look at the further correlation between random ticker and the same ticker post any volatility mean. They are highly correlated. So it means that random ticker information So that's why this simple baseline is very powerful, because it accurately captures the ticker information, which is similar to assign a random embedding for the ticker, and also similar to other baselines used in its call transcripts. So in some sense, a lot of fancy models. So we just test the large language model based models, but I guess other models, several other models, complicated models, do not have good results. The key reason is that the mainstream method to use earnings call transcripts must only capture ticker identity, didn't really capture the semantics. So if we see the embedding captured by all kinds of models with different prompts and with different models, so we can see that within ticker similarity of embedding is much higher than the overall similarity for the whole data set. So not only large language model is not good at prediction for regression, but the surprising thing is that large language model even cannot capture good embedding with suitable prompting. Advanced prompting couldn't get meaningful embedding. It simply captures the ticker identity instead of the semantics. So we guess that because large model is not very sensitive to numeracy, and the numeracy, those numbers in the transcripts are much more important in some sense compared to the text for financial prediction. Okay, any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
Could possibly be the reason maybe it's running with the structure of the NLP, and it's not because like
That's a good question. So we actually tried multiple models, including transformer. So and I didn't show that the baseline. We also consider all complicated models, including time series, transformer, bias term. So we didn't do this detailed analysis, but their performance is similar to. So their performance is quite similar to, or worse than our baseline. So and their performance is similar to those MLP system. So we didn't do so detailed analysis on embedding predictions, but their performance is still worse than our simple baseline. And we actually for two-layer MLP part, even for embedding part, so we didn't do so detailed analysis, but performance similar. Performance is similar. Yeah.
So the random embeddings are just generated like initially and then fixed. They're not updated over the course of training, right?
Right. No.
So it's not even like you're learning anything about the structure of the market or something like that.
Yes.
It's literally just like,
Yes.
so that's interesting because it's even like it seems like that finding is even stronger then, because it's not even like, because like the way you could read this is that the LLM is basically just saying like you said, just company identity, but not even any information about the kind of company it is, which is
Yes.
surprising. Like it doesn't, like that's quite surprising that it's not using any information about like say like this is an auto company versus like this is a food company or something.
Yes, exactly. And that's why our simple baseline have this potential. So because if you assign the same random embedding for the same ticker and you train on the training data, it actually learns that ticker identity. So it's closer to the same ticker post learning value, the mean of the same ticker post learning value. You can see their correlation is quite high. So using random embedding and the two-layer multiple layer perception actually almost know exactly as the same ticker mean. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so in summary, in the first part, we investigate the role of large language model confidence on bias effects in measured uncertainty. So we can see that when model is less confident, it tends to have more sensitive to bias in terms of both epistemic and ideotoric uncertainty. And what's worse, so large model will turn to more overconfident. So if you are less confident, you become more less confident or less confident. That's okay. But if the model is less confident, but you are too overconfident, you actually make something like really low probability as high probability. That's a terrible thing. Okay, so and in the second part, we see that even though large language model is very powerful, it is indeed very powerful, and a very strong prior for hypothesis generation. But the standard in context learning didn't fully use of demonstration. Even with flipped label, it doesn't really be helpful. So that's the surprising thing. And then the third part, it's not surprising that large language model are still struggle with post-earning volatility prediction due to the regression nature. But it's very surprising that all large language model based transcript embedding may just capture the token identity information compared to other semantics. So in summary, we can see that large language models are very powerful, but it need to have some limitation, and we still need to pay efforts to improve a large language model or design alternatives to alleviate this type of problem. So here are the 3 papers that I just discussed, and thank you. I'm willing to take questions. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
First of all, these are like super interesting. Thank you so much for this talk. And just to clarify, for the inductive reasoning task, the labels are like like hallucination or non-hallucination. So
yeah.
Like an image and a question, that's going to be used for other kinds of labeling, but the labels that are used here are hallucination and non-hallucination.
Yeah, that's in the demonstration. So in demonstration, you will have something like some examples are hallucination, some examples are not hallucination, but our goal is to get some patterns. So get some patterns. So this is our goal. And then with the generated hypothesis, we will use it to make a prediction for new image and questions. So and we also have other tasks. So other tasks including something like choose for hotel. So finding radial post. So something positive, something negative, something like. So whether have some pattern why this description is positive or why it's negative. So we just consider 2 classifications. So 2 class. So we have 2 class, either hallucination or not hallucination, whether positive or not negative for the description and many others. So and then we try to find some general principle to describe the difference. Yeah.
What kind of like general principle would that be? I mean, it's just like a by classification task. So how are you generalize them on?
Yeah. So when we use it, the accuracy is about so I don't know how to answer that, but the accuracy about 68 if we use that rule for downstream task. So it's not maybe 50 is the best time, so it's not so bad. So it indeed be meaningful to be used, but it's not excellent. Yeah. Yeah.
A question about what you think it's going to take to get LLMs to produce good confidence estimates, and whether there's going to be a generic method for doing it, or whether it's simply that like confidence is something that's really specific to the domain, and that you're going to need to actually have training data that's relevant to confidence estimates for particular domains. And if the latter, what is the kind of relevant granularity of domain, right? So like how would we go about fixing the issues that we're seeing, like, generically or specifically?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think, so for uncertainty quantification, I think it's too challenging to directly use large language model itself to do that. So I believe there's some generic method, but may need to leverage maybe symbolic or other techniques. So that's my, so just rely on itself, I think it's too challenging. But maybe, I don't know. So some people try to using hidden vectors, but I don't think that's a good thing. So because large language model is trained on probability, so trained on next token prediction, it highly relies on the probability distribution of your training data. Even your human feedback is another distribution. So I don't think it has all ability to assess it, but maybe with some external tool, it's possible. So, but I don't know what are suitable external tools and how to assess it using some meaningful information from large language model. So that's my guess.
But it sounds like you think that maybe there is like a generic.
Yeah.
Say you thought it was going to be some like the external information,
Yeah.
symbolic in nature. You think that there might be some relatively abstract, like symbolic information that
Yeah.
will allow you to tune the confidences, not that I have to go like, I don't have to specifically tune confidences for the financial domain and then separately tune confidences for, I don't know, the academic domain, like some particular research domain or something like that. You think there will be a generic way of doing it?
Yeah, but those tools need those information. For example, in financial, you still give those examples to large language model. You still get access some information, such as all probability for all tokens in that domain. So we have a generic way, but the domain will have different domain will have different exact value for those information. So I would tend to think that this way. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
My question,
Yeah.
just for clarification, when you were discussing large language models coming up with hypotheses and like they did really well with zero shot attempts. I think on the slide there was a line saying humans also preferred their hypotheses without demonstrations.
Yeah.
Wondering like what exactly that means. Like, does that mean the human trainers like evaluated their hypotheses like more positively? Like, so.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in that part, we simply do this way. So we provide those demonstrations and some examples and the task description, as well as two hypotheses generated. So one with demonstration, one without demonstration, and ask some students to think which one is better and better fit those examples. So, and then they will have a pairwise comparison. So for example, 43, they would prefer without demo, and 34 will prefer with demo for the truthful review. So they can see the task examples, the data set, as well as to generate hypotheses, choose which one is better. Yeah. You're welcome. So any other questions?
That's a general question, and also thanks for your talk, very interesting. I was wondering, as users of like ChatGPT, all these like machine learning like models, like do you have a recommendations for like whether it's like about prompt engineering or like how we can use these models in a better way, or interpret their like these model outputs better, considering all the biases and the uncertainty the responses might be.
So sorry, I want to confirm. You want me whether some general question to interpret? So
as users of like, if you use ChatGPT to ask questions like the stuff that you prompt them to do, and now we know that they may, their answers might be biased by the way we ask, or may be less confident because of certain specific questions we're asking. So yeah, I don't know if any of the results that you're finding here would be informative of like just as for general public how we can like ChatGPT better.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think for example, in the second part or in general, So in first part, we said the specific prompt actually has impact. And it means that you may need to tune your prompt to better fit ChatGPT. And maybe different model have different preference. So and then in the second part, you can see that for inductive reasoning, in some sense, the task description is very important. So the example are also important, but the task description. So it's hard. For general audience, I think people can try to think about when you talk with ChatGPT, not only just explain your own request, but you need to think about which format or which writing or which choice you think will better fit with ChatGPT. So better fit with ChatGPT, in some sense, you need to better fit with its training data or training strategy. And the different model train on different data. So that they have different preferred style of instruction. So at a very early stage, prompting is very important because prompting have big impact. But recently, with large model more and more powerful, prompting is less important compared to originally. But you can see for chain of thought, for reinforcement learning, if you have very detailed chain of thought, still be helpful. So in general, I think when people use it, I hope that people can first aware the ChatGPT couldn't be fully relied. That's the first message. Second is that you may also need to think that how to better phrase or instruction guide the large language model. You need to guide the large language model to better answer your response instead of simply think he's a super intelligent thing. Okay, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you again for listening.